Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Saying yes to yourself is a graceful unfolding, an intentional becoming of the very best version of you. It is my hope that in these conversations, we are able to find our truth and be inspired and empowered to live our very best lives. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's.
Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so thrilled that you're here. And I'm just overwhelmed with love and joy and appreciation for the way I get to spend Thursdays. So Thursdays are the day that I record my podcast, and it has been so fun to see my calendar really, really full of fun and fabulous conversations that are on the way. Today, I have 5 of them, which is so amazing. I was just telling today's guest, because she's my first, oh my gosh, whoever gets to hang out with me on Thursday afternoons gets the absolutely best version of me, because I'm so happy and in my bliss from having these amazing conversations. So I'm super grateful for that. And I'm super grateful for you, because if no one's listening, I don't get to talk. So thank you very much for being here. I also think it's fascinating with this number of conversations and interviews that I'm having weekly. That means that I'm recording several weeks from when you're actually going to listen to it. And I was thinking about that, and I thought, oh gosh, well, I can't really talk about anything that's happening. For example, the total heat wave that we're in right now, because it's July, when you're not going to be listening to this until October. That will just be weird. But then I thought, wouldn't it be fun to talk about the woman I'm becoming instead of the woman that I am in this moment, who's great and I love her. But I also know that when you listen to this, I will have just come back from spending a month in France. And I am obsessed with the woman that I am after spending a month in France. And I know all about her because I do it as often as possible. And it's amazing. And I just invite you to create a new narrative, to maybe the next time that you meet somebody new, that instead of talking about who you are or who you were or what you've been doing, what if we just started talking about who we're becoming? That sounds super fun to me. Let's try it, shall we? It'll be an experiment. Okay, today's guest is the fun and fabulous Katie Ann Powell. She is often known for 3 things: her love of tacos, her podcast, Full Confidence Ahead, and her professional harp playing. Katie Ann is the host and founder of Full Confidence Ahead, a podcast that tackles the fears of life, from family relationships to finances to careers to community. She is a professional harpist and has played for over 20 years in over 7 different countries. And when she isn't behind the harp, you can find her doing water fitness. She just got certified as a sweat water fitness instructor. This is so funny, you guys. She's so cute. This is her bio that she sent me. She's totally darling. She's fabulous. And her podcast and her platform is tackling financial illiteracy and replacing it with financial literacy. So she's very involved in doing that through the Jumpstart program that is informing high school teachers. She is doing that on the podcast significantly, and also using the platform as Miss D.C. on her way to Miss America, bringing her message of financial literacy. So as you and I are practicing this new experiment of speaking as the women we are becoming, I am also speaking this for Katie Ann as well. She is up to big things in the world, and I think you're going to love getting to know her here. Enjoy. Katie Ann Powell, I am so excited to have this conversation. And I have to say, you're one of those people with such a beautiful name that all of the words have to be said.
Yes, thank you. I love that.
Right? I am one too. I am Wendy Harrop. And that is like, that's how I introduce myself. That's how other people introduce me. And you are Katie Ann Powell. And I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you, Wendy. It is such a pleasure to be with you.
It's so fun. Now, friends, I know we're talking to each other like Katie Ann and I are always chatting, but like so many of these beautiful conversations of late, I am getting to know our guest in real time along with you. And I'm just going to tell you, you can trust this one. She's been vetted and we're so happy. So, Ann, please tell us all, how are you saying yes to yourself in this season?
Wow. So many different ways. I think that's really important. The first thing I do to say yes to myself is honestly by budgeting. And I know that kind of sounds counterintuitive, but I just firmly believe I'm a CUNA certified financial counselor and I'm a certified financial educator. And I think one of the best forms of self-care that we ever have is budgeting, taking care. That's one of the number one stressors in life. And the taking care of that is prioritizing yourself and being like, okay, what are the things that are important to me? So I am saying yes to myself by really reevaluating my priorities and rebudgeting and doing that constantly. Actually, every single month right now, I'm rebudgeting, which seems a little bit more frequent than normal people, but that's what I am doing at this phase in my life.
Okay, I have so many questions. First of all, I love that that is what you do, but also what you lead with in the way that you're saying yes to yourself. I also love the frequency in this particular season of the monthly practice, because for any listener or me listening to you who is not necessarily making that a monthly practice, although maybe I am.
By the end of the conversation, you will.
Well,
there
and
you
it's
go.
interesting because, I was going to say, I was about to tell you actually an old narrative that is no longer serving me. And it's not what my current practice is. So I really think that I might be definitely, how can you might be indefinitely? I might be, in fact, implementing this on a more regular basis. And the reason that I say that is because for many years, I was a kept woman and I enjoyed that. My mother was a kept woman. I was a kept woman, and not even really knowing what that meant and how there are two sides to that coin. So yes, it's lovely to be taken care of and to not need to quote unquote worry about things from the financial side, and knowing that, my mother was married to a trustworthy man and I was married to a trustworthy man. But what it actually did was kept me in a place of no information and a place of really perceived powerlessness and many times actual powerlessness without access to said funds or information. And so as I share that and share the transition in my own mindset from, once I separated and started the divorce process, the first thing you have to do for your lawyer is create this financial statement, which here on the podcast we refer to as the forms, because
Love it.
the forms took me 18 months to sit down in front of to fill out. Did not take me 18 months to fill out. Took me 18 months to get over myself because I was such an avoidant princess about it. And coming to a realization over a series of events, lessons, mentors, but really a decision, and to know that freedom is a decision away, is that I've came to a point from avoidant princess to a queen. And a queen knows her numbers, and a queen is not afraid of this because it is simply information. It's like reading a map. It's 37 miles to Phoenix. If you're 37 miles to Phoenix, you still have 37 miles to go. It is just information. It is not a judgment. So anyone who is in my former boat of telling yourself that you're just not a numbers person, telling yourself that you don't like how that makes you feel limited, that's a trick that your ego plays on you based on fear. And knowledge is power. We all know that. And this information is freeing and actually shows the limitlessness of the life of a queen.
Absolutely. I had so many thoughts as you were talking, and I'm just going to start sharing in sequence as you were sharing. Women have been left out of the narrative for a long time with finances. It just wasn't in the culture. And so that's pretty normal for women not to be a part of financial conversations. Now, it's such an interesting thing because when a woman is empowered and knows how to talk about finances or is willing to learn, because sometimes we don't know everything. You don't need to know everything. Let's just put that in the clear. But if you're willing to learn, you can actually show up, whether you're in a partnership or on your own. It is the best thing for your partnership to show up as a contributor to the finances. Finances are one of the number one causes of divorce. And even if you're in a more traditional model where maybe the man is taking care of all those, or maybe it's flipped, maybe you're the one doing all of that. If you're willing to come together in the finances, whatever that looks like in your own way, but coming in, planning, knowing what's there, that actually takes such a pressure off the relationship. And when decisions are made, because all decisions truly come down to finances. Like if you decide to go on vacation, that's money, right? If you decide, like everything, all of our experiences and things that we have in life end up being money. So at the root of every single decision is money, right? So if you can take the pressure off that, then you're more easily able to do well done decisions because you're not thinking of money all the time. And now that's in a relationship or without a relationship. Women need to know their own finances. We need to make sure that we are empowering ourselves because, like I said, we've been left out of the conversation for centuries, but not anymore, not on my watch. Like we need to get back in the conversation and have confidence that, yep, I can manage my own finances. I know what I have. I know how much I can spend. I know that I can give myself grace when maybe I've overspent or underspent or underperformed, that I can give myself grace and work with myself. And it's so important for women to know, going back to your situation with divorce and finances, that is such a stressor for women. Or I know there's research that shows that women stay in sometimes abusive or unhappy relationships because of the finances. But what would empower a woman think of that situation, how it'd be different if a woman knew how to deal with their finances. And on the flip side, I have had friends and I've had other people be in a situation where their spouse unexpectedly passed away or unexpectedly had tragedies, and then they didn't know how to get to the bank the next day. That is a reality for women, or they weren't on their name wasn't on the account, so they couldn't get access to money. So there is just a lot of logistical, both in the benefits of relationships, in your personal life, and in just managing risk in life, that women need to be involved in those conversations. Don't expect yourself to be like, oh, I'm going to invest in everything by tomorrow. That's okay. Just by adding yourself in the conversation of, hey, let's just talk about like what we spent today, is a perfect conversation without judgment. We don't judge, we don't use emotions, that we simply observe ourselves and bring it up. Like no more is money taboo conversation in relationships. Like we can talk about money. It's okay. And no more is it a taboo conversation when you're by yourself. Like do some little self like care time and say, okay, Saturday night at this time, I'm taking myself on a little at home date and I'm looking at my finances. I do that. I have a blast. I adjust my budget. I love it. I think it's fun. Light a little candle. Best thing ever. It's awesome.
Right. And mastery comes from repetition. So
Right.
even if anything feels scary, going to the gym, that, okay, it's hard. It doesn't feel good at first because your muscles are
It
sore.
doesn't. I just started with a personal trainer today and I can't walk. I'm not getting up from this chair for probably 3 hours.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
sore. So proof of
Right.
that.
Right. And it's true, but it's the
Right.
right kind of hard. It's the
Mhm.
right kind of sore. It's not the sore that you feel if you've overindulged in something.
Right.
It's you're just building the muscles. And first of all, women are allowed to make mistakes with money, and we're allowed to give ourselves grace, like you said, and not make that same mistake again. It's fine. It's just information.
Amen. Well said.
I'm telling myself that all the time.
Perfect.
Mastery comes from repetition.
Right.
So, how are you helping people cross this terror barrier of getting in touch with their numbers and following this practice? Are you suggesting that people start with a budget? Are you suggesting people start with a budget that they course correct every month? What is your process?
Yeah, great question. And also let me be clear too, I do this in various avenues for different age groups. So for
Oh,
different age
please
groups,
tell us
I'm
all.
helping this. So I have my own podcast where I'm talking about this on Full Confidence Ahead. I'm also on the board of Jumpstart here in Washington, D.C. So I'm helping with that, and that's more high school ages. So there's different principles, but I'm going to go ahead and speak to adults here. Okay,
Okay.
so anyone 18 and up. Also, let me preface my story a little bit.
Please.
I 5 years ago, if you would have said that I was on a podcast, that I was a financial counselor, that I knew what to do with money, I would have been like, "You're crazy. We are not talking about the same Katie Ann." I had some financial fears, and I had some financial traumas when I became an adult, went to college. I had no idea what I was doing with my money at all. I had like very little money in my bank account. I thought it was all like, wow, this is a lot. Had no idea how to calculate like tuition expenses, no idea how to plan for the future. Had a traumatic experience with money, and that developed fear where every time I went to the grocery store, I was holding my breath to swipe my card because I'm like, oh no, is it going to bounce? And so it was constant, like these thoughts, and like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh no, am I planning for the future? Will I have enough? Were constant thoughts, and that accumulates to fear and trauma, right?
Sure.
And it was quite a few years that I had this, and then I finally was like, Katie Ann, come on, it's time to change. Had the opportunity to do a financial literacy class. It was a 12-week course, and I think I share my story too, because also one of the things was I had to be committed. And I committed to this 12-week course, and I committed to changing. Those two things, like commitment, are probably the first step. So even if you don't even know where to start with finances, if you just say, I'm committed to changing, first step, right? So that was the first step for me. I went through this 12-week course. The first 3 weeks, so overwhelmed. I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. But then a click happened in week 3 when we talked about budgeting. It was like this pressure valve release, because suddenly all these doubts of, do I have enough of all this? I learned like, oh my goodness, if I have a budget, I don't have to have any of those thoughts ever again. Right. And so it was such a relieving thing to me that when you have an experience like that, it builds so much confidence. So you can't stop talking about it. So I talked about it for forever and thought, man, okay, I got to do something about this talking. joined some 501c3s, loved that experience with financial literacy, became a certified volunteer, grew in knowledge. Then I became a financial counselor, started working at a credit union. Like my life just spiraled to now. I can't believe where I am with money. So I share that story to also, as I say the first steps, if you're like, oh my gosh, it seems so scary. Yeah, me too. I was in the same spot where I'm like, I literally, I was holding my breath every time I was at a grocery store. So if you're at that point, if you're lower than that point, if you're above that point, if I can be a financial counselor today, believe me, you can feel comfortable with your finances. Like you can do it. So I just share that for the listeners, just to not be like, oh, wow, they're so much farther ahead. No, not at all. I just decided to commit. So that's the first thing. Commit. Say, I'm changing. I do some I am statements. I am good at finances.
Right.
And if you're like, if that's hard, then I will be good at finances. Start there, right? Okay, so that's step one. The next step, when we're as an adult, the first thing we need to do with finances is just truly understand where you are. So take a month and just write down all of your expenses and all of your income, because you can't work with anything unless you know what you're spending and what you're taking in. And this is a non-judgmental thing, as it can be hard to write down all your expenses. That can be hard. And this is just something
it's like
that
a food diary.
Right,
Ugh,
right. It's hard.
It's not interesting to me either.
Right. And when you're like, ooh, but like a food diary, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I actually had 5 cupcakes. But just write it down. This is not a judgment point. But when you write something down, you're admitting to taking responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to take responsibility before you can ever change, because or else the power is out of your hands. And you're like, oh, well, some other force is making me spend money a different way. But if you write it down, you are empowered and saying, I'm responsible for these charges, which means I can change it. And what a powerful place that is. So if you have no idea where to start, just start writing down your expenses and income. No judgment, but just take responsibility. Yeah, I bought that off of Amazon. That's awesome. And you'll also actually feel better gratification with your purchases, because you're owning up to what you're doing. Like, yeah, I bought that ice cream. That was great, right?
Yep.
Just own it. So that's step number one. And then there's plenty of resources to go from step one into, and I'm happy to share those, but taking responsibility is huge.
I love that. Yeah. And can you share our maybe steps 2 and 3, just so that, okay, now we're writing all of this stuff down and we're not judging ourselves. And now what do we do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and also when I say write it down, that can be in various formats. Like it can be physically writing it down on paper. It could be an Excel sheet. There's apps to track that. Like there's so many different things. Just as long as you are conscious of what's getting put down and you're owning up to it. So that, like, it doesn't have to look like pen and paper. I'm a technology person. I use apps, love it. So whatever that looks like for you, you can do that. So yeah, steps 2 and 3. So the next thing really is to create a budget, but I like to rebrand budget, because that seems, people are like, this is such a scary word. It's not. You're literally giving yourself permission to spend in the areas you want to. For example, as soon as I write down all of my things, I look at myself and I circle categories. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I'm noticing that I'm actually making a lot of Amazon purchases. This is real. This is me. I did this last month. I'm making a lot of Amazon purchases, and they're clothing Amazon purchases. So obviously I prioritize 2 things. I do prioritize having some new clothing, and I prioritize not having to go to the store. Right. And was just like a realization for me of like, oh, okay. So circle similar things. Once you have like a log of this, circle similar things to see what really are my priorities, because priorities are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a priority is where we put our resources, whether that resource is time, energy, money. And you may not agree with the priorities that you're in habit with. You may think that it's something else, and you might have to be like, oh, time to change my priorities. Like, and that's okay. Right? I do that every month.
Right? You know, I mean, it's just information, and it's really helpful.
Right. Super information gives good inspiration for the next step, and you can't do anything until you have a next step, right? So circling categories is the next big thing, of understanding what are my priorities, and then what do I want them to be. And once you've done that, then you create a spending plan. And spending plan is truly prioritizing. I love your question of like, how are you saying yes to yourself? Well, spending plan is like, these are the priorities I'm choosing, and this is the money I'm allocating to these priorities. Like, what a better way to say yes to yourself? You're like, I prioritize going shopping, like clothes shopping, but I prioritize not having to go to the store. So I'm going to be like, yes, Katie Ann, we're going to do that. So I'm going to allocate this amount of money to that.
Right.
Amazing, right?
Yep.
That's such a powerful place to be. So then off of that, we create a spending plan. And there's a lot of helps to do a spending plan because that might seem like, oh, like this is intimidating. There's great places. Dave Ramsey, I love Ramsey Solutions. He's one of my favorites. They have Every Dollar. It's an app. It's super slick, super easy to use. There's YNAB, which it's an acronym for You Need a Budget. Also an app, very easy. There's budgeting templates. You can just Google them online that are free. Another resource I love is Utah Money Moms. They're friends of mine. I've collaborated with them a lot. They're incredible. They have free resources. They have budgeting templates. So there's places out there. I recommend those three. So you've got the Dave Ramsey, Utah Money Moms, and Why Now. Those are three places I go because we could talk like for hours on how to create a budget, but also why not just use an app that does it for you? If you can come up with like, hey, I know my expenses and I know my income, which you'd be tracking over the next month, let an app do that for you. Like
especially if you've already identified that you're in the avoidant princess camp.
Yeah.
Then don't transfer your avoidance to, well, I have to have the best budget and let me look at all of these different ones and see which one. It's just a waste of time. Just write it down.
Yep.
And let's move on.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, that's fantastic. So how are you, like, what do you do next? Why are you passionate about sharing this? What are your hopes and dreams as far as spreading this message?
Yeah, that's a great question because this is a very active pursuit for me right now. So I think it's become my life mission just because I had that such a strong experience where I went from fear to confidence. And then I also went from confidence to skills. Not only did I feel confident with myself, but then I started loving and seeing that change in other people. That is fulfillment to me. So number one, that is fulfillment to me. So really, finances and financial empowerment will be a life mission for me. And I'm sure in my life, it'll look different. And whether that's teaching it to my family, whether that's doing it as a profession, whether that's my podcast, like it will look different in avenues, but it will be part of my life for forever. I understand that and feel that quite deeply of like, okay, this is a skill I have. It's something I love and it will be a part of my life for a very long time. So as that's part of my life mission, it's something that I'm actively volunteering in. So there's a couple fun things that I'm doing. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm on the Jumpstart board here in Washington, D.C. So that we're an active coalition. We're just restarting that board. So it's very much so in process. So that's something that's going on. My podcast, I've been doing that for over 2 years and that will continue. And my podcast, Full Confidence Ahead, it's kind of fun. So every 5th to 7th episode is a financial one. And then in between it's life skills, because also if you're just talking about finances all the time, like we're going to get burnt out. Right. And I realize that. So it's also looking at all different kinds of life skills, but this is kind of a fun, unique one. Something that just happened about a month ago. I'm actually Miss D.C. and I'm going to Miss America in just a couple of weeks. So it's kind of fun. And you run on a social initiative and mine is financial literacy. So I'm very actively in Washington, D.C. right now. Like this is my year to change financial literacy, like change what that looks like here in Washington, D.C. And then I'm bringing that to Miss America very soon. And hopefully, like cross our fingers, hopefully that I'm taking it around America, right? So I'm very active pursuit of this. And all of those are kind of volunteer mechanisms and life fulfillment mechanisms in my life. So it's kind of a unique spot where this message is something that I'm like, yeah, we're in the trenches. Like we are rolling on this right now.
Oh my gosh, I love this for you.
This
is amazing because I mean, it's a beautiful platform to share far and wide. And the fact that you are already working with young adults through Jumpstart And that is in high schools. Is that correct?
Right. And yeah, Jumpstart. So it depends on your coalition. You can do any ages, like school ages, but in our coalition, we're specifically focusing on high school right now.
Okay. And how is that? I have lots of questions, but
Yeah.
how is that program, because obviously it was not, well, I'm not going to say obviously, it wasn't a class that I chose in high
Right.
school. If it was there, I don't believe that it was an option. So what are the types of things that you are teaching, and what kind of results are you seeing?
Good question, because every single one of these avenues is actually for a different target demographic. So let me speak first to Jumpstart. And so Jumpstart is also, so Jumpstart, the National Jumpstart Coalition, it's an umbrella. And then we have our individual state coalitions. So we're the state coalition under the national one. So our coalition, we've really decided to focus on high school. And what we're doing is we're empowering the teachers to then empower the students. So this one's like giving the teachers the knowledge of how to teach financial literacy to then empower the students. Because right now, financial literacy is not in the core curriculum in Washington, D.C. However, it is actively in process of becoming that. So it's in council right now. They're looking at the areas to add it into the curriculum, which is really exciting. And we're hoping to support that initiative as well, getting it actually mandated in the schools. But also we understand that our best avenue for high schoolers is empowering the teachers to then empower the students. So that's that avenue there. So everything's a little bit different. As Miss D.C, I'm specifically focusing on women, but I'm open to teaching everyone. But women 18 to 35 is really my demographic in all 8 of our wards. So I'm trying to get into every part of our district and really do budgeting classes. So I'm empowering the individual here. So Jumpstart, we're empowering the teacher to empower the student. Miss D.C, I'm really empowering the woman and going to the individual. And that's pretty much the same demographic for my podcast as well. Yeah, I'm trying to reach the individual. So a little bit different goals and areas and people. And I've been on different boards and I've done different things that sometimes I've targeted. I used to be in the West, and I was on quite a few councils in the West, and back there, I was kind of targeting more elementary school age. So it's changed throughout my life of who I'm targeting, but those are kind of my places and people right now.
I love that. And I love the intention behind it as well. And it's just it's a really phenomenal way to use the platform and to use your, like, the title and what you're doing. Of course, we want to be sensitive to people that don't have the same luxuries or privileges that we have. And as for me, a middle-aged white woman living in the US, I realize that I have loads of privilege. What I am doing with that privilege, instead of apologizing for it or making myself small, thinking that my smallness is somehow going to raise somebody up, that's bad math. It actually does not work. I'm going to use my privilege. I'm going to use my voice. I'm going to use the freedom that I have because I live in this country, and I'm going to have a podcast, and I'm going to be inviting women to say yes to themselves all day long, every day, whether I'm sitting next to you on a plane, going to France, because I am also using my privilege and my platform to celebrate what we're doing. And those rising tides raise all ships. Yes, I'm a philanthropist. Yes, I am generous. And yes, my audience are women that are just like me. And when we use our privilege and our platform to have an impact, it brings change. The Dalai Lama said, it takes a woman with a checkbook to change the world. And it's true. And Mother Teresa said, oh, you know what? That might have been Mother Teresa. Dalai Lama said the Western woman will change the world. Mother Teresa said it takes a checkbook to change the world. So we will meld both.
We'll meld them together.
Brilliant, wise minds and stop apologizing and actually take responsibility for who we are and the voice we have. You are a beautiful woman. You are a part of this organization that celebrates beauty inside and out. And there are not very many people without outside beauty that make it far in that. And again, instead of apologizing for being gorgeous, get on a bigger stage, queen. Like, this is amazing. Because you're not just sharing like, oh, this is my beautiful, perfect blonde hair. Like, it's not that. It's so, well, actually, I hate the way that women are discounted. And I hate the way that the culture discounts us before we even get a chance to do that for ourselves. And I love that you are doing this. I love that you are using your platform to elevate and grow the platform of financial literacy. And I love that you are a living example of moving through the trajectory of feeling powerless to being empowered, and that you didn't just do that for yourself and wipe your brow. Phew, okay, that was a close one. Now I at least know when I go to Target that I don't need to be afraid. You're using that information and you are helping other people just even normalize a budget. It's really beautiful.
I think I love sharing my story too, because I think it's just a pretty normal, although I wish it wasn't, like I'm a pretty normal case in the world. And then I think people can relate to me of having that financial trauma of whatever scale that was, but having only like $200 in your bank account or less, or holding debt and freaking out, swiping your card and not really knowing how to manage. So basically being broke and not knowing how to swipe your card, right? Like, this is something I think that a lot of people can relate to on whatever scale. And from there we can build together, and then I can give confidence of like, been there, I understand you, I see you, and let's just a few life adjustments can change your whole world. And I think the other thing to that is utilizing, I love what you said of also, there are cultural differences, there are divides in our world. And I've really worked to be able to educate myself and counsel people that may be different than me. And then also give them resources with people who are similar to them. So I'm fluent in Portuguese, which is kind of fun. So I've done a budgeting TV show, and I did that both in English and Portuguese. So that really hit a Brazilian population in the West, which they have different strengths, weaknesses, excitements, and different things with money, that I was able to tap into that and speak a little bit more personally to that. The other thing that I kind of specialized in the last 2 years is talking to our ITIN holders. And an ITIN is for a tax ID number when you don't have a social security. And so those are typically people who are here in the United States who aren't yet a citizen. And that's a whole different experience. And there's a lot of different philosophies with money. And so the last couple of years I've actually been counseling people. And I've learned every single person from every different country comes in with different money beliefs, and that's beautiful. And we can take your beliefs and just elevate your beliefs so they best fit you, rather than just trying to change or do things. Is that we're trying to take the best versions of themselves. And then sometimes also, like you said, we might look or be different than certain demographics. And so I have great resources too. Clever Girl Finances is one of my favorite resources. It's a group of Black women in an urban area who have financial resources. And I love them. And they can speak to different demographics that I can, even a little bit more personally, and have that personal touch. And so also as a financial counselor is having those resources to then also get them to people who can best understand their needs and wants. I think it's really important.
I love that. And I love that that's so fun that you're fluent in Portuguese and that you are able to not just use that when you're sitting on the beach in the Algarve, you can use it where you are now and continue to spread your message.
Do you know about the Algarve in Portugal?
Because that's the only place in Portugal I've been.
That's awesome.
Yes,
I lived in Portugal for 1.5 years. So that's where.
Did you? Yes, my great aunt. Okay. Everyone referred to her in my family as crazy Aunt Netta. Crazy Aunt Netta married a count from France and had a home in France and a home in Portugal. So she's a countess. That is not crazy. All of you people are crazy. I didn't even know about her until I was an adult and was able to take a trip to visit her and stay in her amazing home in the Algarve with my grandfather, her brother, and my aunt. And it was amazing. And I do not speak Portuguese, but I made my way. It was fantastic. Yes. What took you to Portugal?
I was with my church ministry. So that's what I was service over there in Portugal, and a beautiful opportunity to connect with the culture and really dive in and live with them and be with them. So it was the most incredible experience.
I bet. So did you speak the language a little bit before you went, and then in that immersive experience, definitely?
Yeah, the immersive experience, definitely. Yeah. So my church helps prep a little bit. They give you some language classes for a couple weeks. But honestly, those language classes really don't equate to much once you get over there. It's like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're like, wow, I can ask, how are you doing? And that's it. And so really it was getting in and making an effort, because you can go by and you can be like, you know what, I'm just going to be comfy. Like I could have made it with English totally. Like I could have lived there for a couple years and been okay, but you have to choose to be a part of the culture and be like, I'm going to try and I'm going to fail. And it's so funny. I'll just tell a short little story of whenever you're learning something. And I think this is important with finances or whatnot. You're going to make mistakes. And I love to laugh at mistakes, but I was, still pretty early on in learning Portuguese and had a lot of mosquito bites and was reacting. And so I was talking to a nurse on the phone about putting some cream on it. And now there's the word pomada, which is cream, and pomba means pigeon. And so on the phone, I was like, oh, I just put some pigeon on my arm. And then this nurse started cracking up because they knew I was American. I was trying, and they knew what I was getting at, but I was like, what did I do wrong? And I had no idea. And the person who was with me at the time, I had a friend with me. She was like, do you know what you just said? I'm like, no, I really don't.
I know what I was trying to say. That's all I know.
Yeah, lots of moments like that.
I actually love that story, Katie Ann, because it speaks to what we were saying earlier about being allowed to make mistakes with money. It's okay when you are starting something new or starting a new way of doing something or a different way, or if you've been financially literate your whole life and you make a mistake. You can do that. You can recover. Everyone knows your intention.
Right.
There might be that one person that laughs at you, but chances are they're laughing with you. And it's all just a part of the process. And it's actually how we get better.
It's so true. Just laugh. Make life fun. Laugh.
It's fine. You're not one decision away from financial demise. Right. We know too much about God and too much about his extraordinary love for us. That is not going to happen. So just be gracious with yourself and learn this new way of doing things and be empowered on the other side of it.
So true. Beautifully said.
Oh, thank you. I have loved this conversation. I so appreciate you. I'm super excited to be on your podcast too. Super fun.
I'm excited to have you.
Yay. So please tell everyone where they can find and follow you, where we can watch you be crowned Miss USA. I'll just speak that into
Miss America, different
Miss
lines.
America.
Miss America.
Sorry.
You're good.
Yeah, sorry.
Just so they're not watching, like that line's great and stuff, but Miss America, different place.
Miss America. Okay, I didn't even know. I don't even watch
There you go.
TV, but I'm gonna.
Now
I'll
you will.
watch for you for sure because I'm all about the story, right?
Oh,
Like I don't know any of those other fabulous humans, so I wasn't gonna watch them, but now I know you, so now I'm vested.
Oh,
I
thank
love
you.
it. I love it. My pleasure. Okay, so tell everybody where they
So
can
the
follow
best
you and where
place
you actually are. Not where
right.
you aren't.
The best place that people can follow me is honestly my podcast. If you just Google search Full Confidence Ahead, it will pop up. So Full Confidence Ahead, it'll pop up. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I don't know, wherever you get it, like my website, it'll pop up. So Full Confidence Ahead, that's my best thing. I have a couple different socials, mostly Instagram. That's you know, my generation, that's where we're at. So Instagram, I'm the Instagram girly. I've got a couple different ones. If you do Miss America DC, you'll find Miss DC, you'll find me there with that. And I'll have updates when Miss America is. They haven't announced when it is, and so we'll know within like 2 weeks when it is and how to watch it, but it'll be probably either December or January. So in the near future. But if you follow Miss America DC, you'll see me, the blondie with finances. Like that's me. You'll know you're following the right one. So there's that one. Then I also have Katie Ann _Powell. That's my personal one. But I'm also, we didn't get to this, but I'm also a harpist. So if you go harpist _Katie Ann. So I have like those three going on, but really like go first to my podcast. And if you don't remember those, they're always all over my podcast. So just go to my podcast. You'll figure it out. Like all the things will come together in my podcast. So go to my podcast. Full Confidence Ahead.
Well, we celebrate multi-passionate women on this podcast. So none of us can pick just one thing. Not worth it. But we will link everything down below in the show notes. But thank you so much, Katie Ann. I loved chatting with you and I can't wait to cheer you on.
Thank you. You're just a delight.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at phineaswrighthouse and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.